Really interesting new development with the minimum wage. Essentially, all efforts, the last-minute efforts, have had to be dropped. Let's put Jeff Stein's tweet up there on the screen. Stein reports that senior Democrats, including Ron Wyden and Bernie Sanders, are pulling the plug on their Plan B, which was to tax megacorporations through a backdoor minimum wage hike. The proposal, after the Senate parliamentarian ruled that a $15 straight minimum wage raise would not be compliant with the Byrd rule, was to try and make it a tax on large corporations and essentially backdoor a minimum wage hike within there. Now they're essentially dropping it, as it seems, because either of lack of feasibility, more likely lack of political support, Krystal. And what it brings it to is the final conclusion that the Democrats, by and large, in an organized body, were not committed to try and raising the minimum wage. To be very clear, if they wanted to do it, they could do it. If they wanted to fire the Senate parliamentarian and bring somebody else in, they absolutely could. If they wanted different scoring techniques and a different way to make it through a hike or more, absolutely. This tax one is actually, you could have gotten some bipartisan support. Josh Hawley actually just proposed the exact same thing. You would have at least had one Republican vote on the other side for something like this to try and bypass that. They didn't do it. So it's very clear here that this is the final, basically nail in the coffin, at least this round, for a $15 minimum wage, and that tells you a lot about the Biden administration, number one, and two, the organized Senate Democratic caucus and what they're actually willing to fight for.
I actually didn't really like the Plan B. It leaves out, I think, a majority of workers. It was complicated. It suffered from all the typical Democratic problems of it's hard to understand, it's overly complicated, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is, look, they are laying this at the feet of the frickin' parliamentarian. Like there's, nothing we can do. Too bad. The parliamentarian said no. The parliamentarian does nothing but advise on her opinion of whether this meets the Byrd rule or not. They could fire her. They could also Kamala Harris could just overrule her. Okay? There are many options on the table. So then the next piece is, and I saw this analysis. The reason the minimum wage isn't going to pass is because there aren't 50 votes in the Senate for the minimum wage. Look, that might be true. It might be possible that even with applying massive political pressure and putting Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema on blast and making it clear, look, they're at odds with their constituents on this issue. It's not like they're taking a popular position even in their states, but maybe it's possible that even after you do all of that, they're still intransigent and you can't get it done. Okay, then, that's fine. But to not even try, to not even fight, it's pathetic. It's utterly pathetic. You saw this habit with Obama as well, where it was just this assumption that the votes are what they are, and there's nothing we can do to change it. It's completely static. It's fixed. It's set in stone, and there's nothing I can do as president of the United States to change that. That's bullshit. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. So again, it was the Biden administration ultimately here. And look, I know there's a lot of pressure on Bernie right now to try to keep the $15 minimum wage in the bill. He really fought for this thing, including working with lawyers behind the scene to try to impact the ultimate outcome of the Senate parliamentarian. This falls all at the feet, of course, of the Republicans who were united in their opposition to it, by the way. But ultimately, it's the Biden administration who were never serious about really fighting for this. And let me say one other thing about this, because I think it's important context. First of all, we keep bringing up that when Bernie endorsed Biden, this is the one issue that Biden was really clear on. Yes, I support the minimum wage. Yes, I'm going to fight for it. But also recall at the beginning of this administration, Bernie laid down a whole series of things that could do through budget reconciliation. The only one of those pieces that was really picked up on here was the $15 minimum wage. And now we're not even going to get that. And don't fool yourself that this is going to pass through regular order or any other way. This was the shot. If you can't do it through budget reconciliation, it is not going to happen. In spite of that, Jen Psaki still pretending like they're really committed to it and they're really fighting hard to get it done. Let's take a listen to that.
Can you promise Americans that President Biden will raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by the end of his first term?
Well, he can't do it on his own, but he is absolutely committed to raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. He thinks it's long overdue. He believes that men and women who are working hard, trying to make ends meet, should not be living at the poverty level. And we're going to spend the next few days and weeks looking for the best path forward, working with Democrats and Republicans, hopefully, to do exactly that.
If you support it, but you don't fight for it, your support is utterly meaningless.
Yes.
It's a joke. It's a lie. It's garbage. And that's what's been exposed over these past few days.
Yeah, it's fakery. And it's just basically, it's like fake mysticism of being like, well, there's this process and there's nothing you can do about it. Don't let them lie to you. They didn't want to do it. That's it. Very clearly. And then, fine. But justify that. Own it. And then, of course, the Republicans are dumb enough to let them get away with it. It's not like they're actually going to pay a price from many of their own voters for even getting away. But people should know, and many of those out there, if you took them at their word that they wanted to support this, they are letting it go simply because they don't want to fight for it. And as I've said here before, if you bring an immense amount of political pressure to bear on Joe Manchin, maybe you would get 12. I mean, that would still be a dramatic increase. He said, I'd be supportive of something 12. Okay, do 12, right? I mean, fine. That's, again, I actually think something, Lindsey Graham might actually vote for something like that. Even Josh Hawley would vote for something like that. I bet you could probably get a Mitt Romney vote for something like that. But they didn't even try. They're just trying to ram it through. And it just goes to show that they are self-limiting themselves with a very lackluster COVID relief bill, which, yes, I don't want to downplay it, but relative to what the country needs and what the country wants, it's just not there.
Well, and let me tell you what the risk is, because we keep going back to that 2008 parallel.
Right.
When the stimulus, okay, sure, it was better than nothing, but it was woefully inadequate. Financial reform that was passed, woefully inadequate. The health care law that was passed, woefully inadequate. All of these things were better than what the Republicans were doing. They were better than nothing.
Right.
They were all improvements. But you know what the risk was? You know what the problem was in that 2010 midterm, which, by the way, happened to be a candidate, didn't end well for me or any other Democrat running across the country? It was the fact that the base of the Democratic Party was completely demoralized.
Right.
They didn't feel, they were like, why would I show up for this? And so their turnout dropped dramatically. Republicans were fired up in opposition. And you see in this whole episode the makings of a similar thing. Like, you're doing everything you can to demoralize the people that you need ultimately in the midterms to turn out. Because that's what midterms are about. Midterms are a turnout game. It's a different dynamic somewhat than the presidential year cycles, because you just have naturally lower turnout. So it matters who's fired up and who shows up to the polls. With the episode with the checks, with the inadequacy of the relief, and now with just throwing up your hands and not even bothering to fight on the minimum wage, exposing that you didn't actually want it or you weren't committed to it from the beginning, you are very much in danger of repeating that whole 2010 cycle all over again.
100%.
Tomorrow in Rising, we're going to have Jennifer Holdsworth-Karp and Rachel Bovard. They're going to join us for Team Rising.
In the New York Times, Jane Coaston, she's going to be back. Remember to hit the subscribe button. You don't miss any of our videos. Don't forget to like and share as well, and we'll see you all tomorrow.